Do you feel continually let down by modern media? Do you miss the good old days, back when all that mattered was a good story and not some agenda? Do you have ambitions of picking up a pen and pad and fighting the creative war yourself? Then this is the podcast for you. Each week, I'm going to talk to a creator who said enough is enough and started making the content they wished was out there. Join us as we discuss the ups and downs of the self-publishing world. We want to help empower you to join the Iron Age of media. Welcome to Iron Age Marketing. Welcome to Iron Age Marketing. I am here with Mr. John Leister. How are you doing there, John?
I'm good, Nicholas. How are you? Thank you so much for having me on. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it.
Well, I got that email from you, and as I said in the email, I couldn't not have someone on. Do you have like a background in sales, or like what were you doing before you were in books?
Nothing. I barely graduated high school. I graduated by the skin of my teeth.
Okay.
I've been a security guard for 35 years. I'm still a security guard. That's still my bread and butter job. But in my heart, body, and soul, I always was meant to do something creative with my life. Unfortunately, I allowed myself to get sidetracked. I wanted to be a comic book artist when I was a kid. I had a huge comic book collection. I was into Marvel and DC comics, and I was drawing every day for 3-4 hours. But I got lazy and I gave it up. And then after high school, I tried acting for a couple of years. I don't know how old you are, but there was a show in the late 1960s called The Big Valley. And one of the stars, it was a Western, an American show. And one of the stars of that show, Peter Breck, he came to Vancouver in the mid-'80s and he started an acting school called the Breck Academy. So I studied acting with him for a couple of years. And I got to meet Gene Hackman, and I got to meet Richard Dreyfuss. They came to the Academy, and I was an extra in Rocky IV. That was an amazing experience. The big fight at the end with Ivan Drago was shot at the Agrodome in Vancouver, and they had an open casting call for extras. But unfortunately, and I don't mean to grow you or any of the listeners to your podcast out, but I developed psoriasis. I've always had very dry. Do you know what that is? I've always had very dry. Yeah, okay. That's pretty common. I've always had very dry skin, and of course, it became exacerbated by mitigating factors such as stress and worrying about every little thing and having low self-esteem. I was kind of going through life with my half glass of water, half empty as opposed to half full. So, my skin just got to be so bad, literally, like chunks of skin were falling off. And I'm a recovering sugar junkie. I used to be very overweight. I used to weigh anywhere from 235 to 250 pounds. So I was pounding down junk food every day. And so I gave up on my dream of acting, but I was doing some writing back then, too. Writing has been the one constant in my life here and there until 2019 when my life really changed. And even back then, I was writing scenes for acting class. I was writing monologues, and I was going to auditions. I had an agent. I was going for it. And sometimes the casting directors would say, well, I've never heard that monologue before. Because usually actors would just take the monologues out of scripts and playbooks. And I said, well, because I wrote it. So they always seem to be anyway impressed by that. So I've just been kind of spinning my wheels in life, not really doing anything very productive until 2019. And here's where the story takes a turn for the bizarre for some people. And I don't mean to be pushy or preachy about any of this stuff. I'm just sharing my experience, and I'm sharing what is for me and what has moved my life in a much more, let's say, more productive direction. What happened was I kind of felt like I was reaching the end of my rope in life. And I came home from work one day and I took a leap of faith and I started talking to God. And I reached out to God and I said, God, I don't know if you're real. I don't know if I'm talking to myself right now. I've heard about you my whole life. I've always been something of I would never describe myself as a full-out atheist because at the end of the day, it's a hypothetical, right? None of us really knows what happens after that. Maybe nothing happens. We're not meant to know. It's the unknown. You either have faith or you don't have faith. And so I had to decide for myself that I'm the kind of person I think who tries a little bit harder when I have it in my mind's eye that someone who loves me and accepts me for who I am unconditionally. I think we all need love in our lives. Each and every one of us needs to feel love. And if we don't feel love, then we have to imagine that someone loves us. And for me, that has been incredibly motivating. So just to backpedal a little bit, around 2005, I wrote a bunch of short stories. I created this character called Lee Hacklin. He's a private investigator, and the stories are set during the 70s and the 80s. And I wrote about he's a smoker and he's a drinker and he's a skirt chaser and he's a man's man, but he's got a heart of gold and he's a total badass and he likes to help people. He's my kind of hero. And so I was just at work one day around 2005. I just cranked out like 50 or 60 of these short stories. I didn't even really intend to publish them. I just wrote them for my own amusement more than anything else. So after I reached out to God and asked him to help me, I dusted off these short stories that were, the pages were curled and yellowed in my bedroom, and I read them. And I don't know if you do any creative writing, Nicholas. I mean, it's hard to be objective about your own stuff. But it was the first time that I read something as if someone else had written them. And I thought, gosh, I mean, I know these are not great literature. Essentially, at the end of the day, what I'm writing is pulp fiction. It's good guys and bad guys. But I'm having a good time reading them. And I really like this guy, Lee Hacklin, probably because he's basically me. He's an idealized version of me, which is something that I think a lot of writers do. I think that's what Ian Fleming did when he created James Bond, or Tom Clancy when he created Jack Ryan. They're avatars. They're idealized avatars of ourselves. So I cobbled these stories together. Here you go, shamelessly plugging his product. And they became my first book, The Collected Cases of Lee Hacklin, 1970s private investigator book. Hang on, I want to take a breath. And so this is 2019 now, when I decided to become a self-published author. And I had it in my mind's eye, 3 clicks of a mouse, and how hard can it be? Well, for me, it was a tremendous struggle just to get that first book posted to Amazon, because I'm not a tech savvy guy. I need to be explained. I need stuff explained to me over and over again before it finally sinks in. And so it took me about a month of going to the library after work, 2 hours after work and on my days off, just to get that first book published. Amazon was rejecting my banking information. I kept going to the bank and they said it was the right information. I was going in circles and I was losing my mind. If I didn't have God in my life, if I hadn't taken this leap of faith, knowing who I was 3 years ago, I would have given up after 2 or 3 tries. But because I had taken this leap of faith, because I had in my mind's eye that God is watching me, like Big Brother from 1984, but not in a harsh, punitive way, in a loving, paternal way, I stayed the course. And when I saw on the screen for the first time, your book has been published, it was just a very surreal feeling for me. I thought, gosh, this is like one of the few times in my life where I actually started something and there were hiccups and variables along the way, and I didn't bail. Like I actually crossed the finish line. And I just wasn't used to that feeling. And I thought, you know what? I'm 53. I don't know how many years I have left. I'm 57 now. I want to feel this way all the time. So now it's 2023. And I've discovered over the last 3 years that not only do I have this desire to write, but that I can do it and that I don't have to will myself to do it. I have almost 100 books online. Now, mind you, some of them are not very long. I mean, depending on the format, some of them are about 100 to 150 pages long. I call them novels. I feel like the story is as long as they need to be. What I've discovered about myself over the last 2 years is that when I publish a novel, I can start the next one on the same day, and I don't have to will myself to do it. Oh, and by the way, I gave up on Amazon. I had some hiccups with them even after I published that first book. So I discovered another platform. And to any of your listeners who were thinking about doing what I'm doing, if you want to become a self-published author, I highly recommend GraphTube Digital. It took me 5 minutes to post my first book onto that website. And what they do is they springboard your book to other websites. So all of my books are available on Barnes & Noble and Kobo and Apple and 5 or 6 other platforms. And then I discovered another website called Poster My Wall, and that's how I designed my book covers. And it's only been over the last year or so that my books actually have covers. So that's my story in a nutshell. Getting older for me has been nothing but a win. It's been nothing but a positive. I'm more aware of the finiteness of time. Our lives are incredibly fragile. I'm lucky that I made it this far. And so I'm much more motivated now to manifest the John Leister that I've always wanted to be, always knew that, much more so than I was a young man. When I was a young man, I was just too easily distracted. I was just into reading and watching movies and DVDs. I had a huge DVD collection. And then, if you watch all the special features like the audio commentaries and and the deleted scenes and all that stuff. I was looking for the Easter
Sometimes.
eggs. I was just uber nerdy and having fun, having a good time along the way, but not productive. Sorry, I just got it. And the difference between every time I watch a movie now, I mean, last year I probably saw 5 movies. I used to watch 5 movies a week. I used to get these box sets, and now I'm just like, and I don't need to be a snob about it. I'm just saying I've discovered about myself that the difference between manifesting and just passively watching what someone else is doing is it just can't be measured. The feeling when I posted that first book 3 years ago, 2019, I thought I could die today. I'm sure glad that I didn't. But if I did die today, if I have a heart attack today, then at least I left something behind, other than an incident report for an unlocked door. Something that for me required a little bit of effort, a little bit of self belief, patience, right? Stick to itiveness. And it's such an important life lesson, I feel, for all of us. And some of us need to be reminded of this sometimes. When we embark on a journey, on something that's new and different for us, that excites us, we have to have it in our mind's eye. I say that a lot. That there are going to be hiccups along the way. There's going to be potholes. There's going to be unexpected obstacles, and it's okay. We have to accept in advance that it's a part of the journey. That this is we're on the path, and the path is not. It's not always going to be smooth sailing. It's going to be choppy water sometimes, and it's okay. The key thing is to keep your eye on the ball and have faith that whatever you're doing is worth it. And never mind if it makes you any money, and never mind what other people think. You just do it for yourself. If the whole world thought, if I knew in advance that the whole world thought I was the world's worst writer, or if they were completely indifferent, I would still do it. Because I know, haven't you ever seen a movie? Do you do any writing? You look like a creative guy. I get that vibe from you. Do you do writing?
I've done some writing. I
Oh,
write for a
good for
very
you.
small
Well,
audience.
haven't you? I'll bet everybody feels this way sometimes. Don't you go to a movie sometimes, like some $300 million CG Gonzo fest, and think, "Gosh, I could go home, sit in front of my laptop, and I could write about the last argument I had with my wife, and it would be more entertaining and more interesting than this stupid CG Gonzo fest that I just wasted my money on." Right? I'm sure we all feel.
I think everybody
I'm
thinks that
sure they
way
do,
today.
but not everybody will actually do it. There's very few people that will actually commit to it. And so this is my thing. There's a million billion things I can't do. I can't fix a car. I'm not a tech savvy guy, as I said earlier, but I can write these books, and I know that they're good, and I feel good about them, and I have faith that before my corporeal existence ends, hopefully not anytime soon, I'm going to meet my Alan Ladd Jr. He's the executive at Fox who greenlit Star Wars. And when George Lucas was trying to sell Star Wars back in the day, everybody told him, nobody wants to see your silly little space movie. These kinds of movies are done, and that's an important life lesson too. You can have a really great idea, and everybody in your vicinity, in your circle, doesn't see the beauty of it, doesn't see the value of it. All you need to do is connect with that right person. Sorry, just got on the phone again. Who sees what you're trying to do, rolls the dice. Al Ladd Jr. rolled the dice. Here you go, George. Here's $8 million. Go make your stupid space movie that we all know nobody wants to see. And lo and behold, it became Star Wars. It became, like, at that time, the most successful movie of all time, and countless spin-offs to this day. And how many people around the world, how many writers, artists, people who design the video games, people who draw the comic books, how many people in the world are making a living doing the thing that they love to do because of one man's vision, because of one man's idea? And that's what I want for myself. Am I comparing myself to George Lucas? Yes, obviously not financially, but not in terms of financial success, but in terms of passion and in terms of the faith that I have in my Lee Hackman character. And all my stories, most of my stories take place in what I call the Johnny verse. It's basically my version of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. My stories are self-contained. You can pretty much read any of my books at random and get a story with a beginning, middle, and end. But if you're a fan, again, hypothetical, if I ever have any, there's some overlap. So I have another character called the Urban Tiger, who's a kid named Tommy Ryder, a 15-year-old kid. He's kind of like Kick-Ass. He doesn't have powers or anything like that. He tries to be a superhero. He puts on a mask and he runs around Times Square in New York City. once or twice a month and tries to be a good Samaritan. And I have another series where Tommy and Lee team up. Lee Hackland and Urban Tiger team up, kind of like Marvel team up or Brave and the Bold, and they have a big brother, little brother kind of relationship. And then I have another trilogy called Training Montages, and then I've also have a two-part science fiction series. I'll never write science fiction again. I as much as I love science fiction, I found writing it's hard because you have to explain everything, right? Like, how are they able to travel through space, and how do the weapons work, and what's life like in the future? And I'm very proud of those books. It's like telling your children, right? You're equally proud of all of them. But I found that writing science fiction to be a real bear. But anyway, that series is called The Taking of Red Star 1, Book 1, Towards Liberty, and Book 2, Defending Liberty. And it's basically the hunt for Red October meets Star Trek. And then I wrote another trilogy called Morning Star's Night, which is outside of the Johnny-verse. It's its own thing. It's basically Superman meets the Book of Revelation. And that's another thing. I'm a huge superhero fan. But again, writing that genre, I just found it to be too hard because, again, you have to explain everything. I like writing about real people and character dynamics, and I think that I'm good at that. I think that I'm good. I don't mean to be overly self-aggrandizing, but I think that my strength as a writer, just saying, I mean, I might be the only person in the world who thinks this way, but one's better than none. I think that I'm able to create characters that the reader can relate to. I grew up reading Archie and Peanuts and Marvel Comics and DC, and there's a reason why these characters have shelf life. There's a reason why these characters continue to be popular with each new generation, because they're so well defined. They have such well defined personalities, right? We all know a kid like Charlie Brown, or we see ourselves in Charlie Brown, and so the stories, I feel, they don't have to be original. To me, it's all about characters. You look at the most popular movies of all time. I mean, look at Titanic. Titanic is one of my all-time favorite movies. But what's the story? Rich girl is engaged to rich jerk, but falls in love with poor boy. I saw that on the Love Boat. That didn't start with Titanic. That's been around. That's probably been around for centuries. And I'm sure James Cameron. And I say that with love and respect to James Cameron. It doesn't matter. What matters is that if you feel a connection with the characters, then boom, you're in. The reader is sucked in, and so that's my story in a nutshell. Sorry, I kind of fell here.
No, you're good. I mean, please, but you do all the work. It's great. I don't have to work as hard. It seemed like so much of what's important there is, relationships. Even if you're talking like in the religious sense, building a relationship with God is what gave you the strength to do what you did. We're talking about Titanic. When you're writing your books, it's the relationship that you have to that person feeling like a real person that makes the book what it is.
Exactly.
That's why it's so hard to write science fiction, superhero stuff, because you have to have a relationship with this place that doesn't exist.
Right.
And some people are really good at that. That's not your forte. But your story is super interesting to me.
Thank you.
As I said, what was really interesting to me is I got an email from you. That's why I asked in the beginning if you're in marketing at all.
No.
There's a lot of psychological things that you did in your email that kind of made it impossible to not get back a hold of you.
Well, that's a great compliment. Aren't you nice?
Building relationships is one of the things that we come back to over and over on this show. And what you did in your email certainly made that we were going to have a relationship of sorts, because if nothing else, you actually did something for me right off the gate. In your email, you say, hey, here's all this information on my book. You don't have to look for it. I've given you links to everything, or here's the Google search term that will give you everything you need. I've already shared out a link to your website off of my social media.
Thank you.
So you've already given me something. From a psychological standpoint, that's an open loop. I have to close that loop. I have to now do something for you, otherwise the universe is out of whack.
My mission statement is it's not just about self-promotion. I mean, that obviously is a big part of it, and I don't see anything wrong with that. But I also hope that I'm inspiring other people too. The way that we feel about ourselves absolutely has an impact on the rest of the world. It has a global impact. When we go through life, and I'm not judging, I'm speaking from my own experience. When we go through life feeling bad about ourselves, we're not just harming ourselves, we're harming everybody around us. Because the people that we interact with, they pick up on those negative feelings. And they can be poisonous. You really, all your listeners to this podcast, please heed these words. You have to love yourself in order to manifest. It's not narcissism. It's not selfishness. You have to be able to look at yourself in the mirror and give yourself a thumbs up and wink and mean it and accept yourself for who you are. And if you have something in your mind, a desire, like you want to get your pilot's license, or maybe you want to go back to school, or you want to write a book, or you want to start a podcast, or you want to open a restaurant, or you want to be an actor, whatever it is that you want to do with your life, if you're not doing it, if you keep saying tomorrow, if you procrastinate, what happens is you're suffering. And every other aspect of your life might be great. It doesn't matter. That suffering is going to claw away in your brain. And that's how I lived my life for 35 years. And so why did I do that? I mean, I don't mean to make excuses, but I just got used to it. I just got used to living that way. You know, it just became a routine for me. And then one day, I don't know why I reached out to God. I think I was just spending way too much time by myself. You know, I was lonely. And so once I let God into my life, and again, if people listening to this, if they go, oh, this guy's crazy, it works for me. You know, this is my philosophy. If it wasn't for God, you'd be interviewing somebody else right now. And I wouldn't have any books online. If I didn't have God in my life, I would have tried 2 or 3 times to upload that first book. Oh, it's too late for me. Back to the couch, back to pounding down pizza and KFC every night, and just eat and drink myself into oblivion and just lose myself in other people's stories. But I see God as like Yoda and Luke Skywalker's rucksack. He's like whispering in my ear all the time. Don't give up. Don't give up. Did you write today? Did you do some push-ups? Are you manifesting? This is my philosophy. And so I hope that it inspires other people, particularly people who are my age, because I'm 57 now. It's very easy to getting caught up in other people's limiting beliefs. People say things like, I've heard this my whole life. If you've never made it by the time you're 30, you never will. Like people actually buy into this nonsense. My mission statement is to show the world that is a pile of BS. As long as you have passion, it doesn't matter how old you are, as long as you have some cognitive ability. I mean, look at Christopher Reeve. Look at poor Christopher Reeve. He fell off his horse. Most people fall off a horse, they get right back up on again, right? He fell off a horse, he became paralyzed from the neck down. He lived for many years after his accident, and look what he did. He continued to act. I think he directed a couple of movies. He became a spokesman for disabled people. He lived his life in a meaningful, passionate way, while I, as a quote-unquote able-bodied man, was spending my time just lying on the couch after work watching my DVDs, right? So
in fairness, you weren't Superman.
He wasn't in every. That's my all-time. The 1978 Superman is probably my all-time favorite movie, and he will always be. He was Superman in every sense of the word, and in terms of his character, especially. And so,
I think it's important message to people to do the thing that they want to do, because I mean, even if all you ever get out of it is a piece of fulfillment. That's still more than most people get out of their lives.
You can't put a price on that.
But more than that, like, and I'm sure you've seen this, because I part of what you're going through your email, you say, here, search this link on YouTube. You've talked to a lot of people over the past couple of years. You have made relationships, and God or not, you're certainly not alone in the world.
I love reaching out to people like yourself, because all you podcasters, you all have the same. You have the passion, you have the energy, you have the warmth, and just that feeling of, we're sticking our necks out. You and I, we're sticking our necks out every day, and we're not afraid to demonstrate to the world that just embrace who you are and put yourself out there. And here's another important thing, and I'm sure we all go through this. You're going to get criticized. You're going to get made fun of. You're going to get mocked. And so what? Let that motivate you. I mean, how many people told Arnold Schwarzenegger, like, what, you want to go to America and become an actor? What, you want to become a bodybuilder? Right? I was the kind of guy who was very sensitive to criticism when I was a kid. But Arnold, he had the opposite reaction. That was just like pouring gasoline on a fire for him. Because I was like, that's a good philosophy, right? That's the right way to go through life. You take all that criticism and you just tell yourself, these are people who are content to sit on the sidelines, right? You and I are in the arena. We're in the arena of life, and it's worth it. It's absolutely worth it. But you have to be able to take it. You have to have a thick skin, because otherwise you might as well just stay home, right? And I think that the older we get, I think that's another good thing about getting older. I think we tend to get a little desensitized. I think when we're younger, we tend to be a little more sensitive. But you go through a lousy experience over and over again. You realize, well, this is not so lousy. This is just, this is just part of life, right? So I've actually had to disengage from a few people in my life, not very many, but let's say two or three, who I really care about and really love. I've actually disengaged from them. Like, just as an example, one of them actually said to me, we were at a social gathering, and he said to me, "Don't talk about your book." Like, some people, I don't know what goes on in their minds. They're jealous.
Hey, don't talk about yourself at all. How about you do that?
Yeah, exactly. Or I love hearing about other people's success stories or their bliss following. I want to hear that stuff, and always want to feel that I'm open to share my story too. So some people, they just feel like they feel threatened, or they feel like I'm bragging or boasting or beating my chest, and that's not it. I'm just sharing. The same guy was very disdainful to me when I was taking acting classes back in the day. Like, some people, they just can't see beyond. They're not. It doesn't make them bad people. They've got their own stuff going on. They have their own contributions to make in life.
But you can't let that be your problem.
Yeah, they're not. They're not visionaries. Their attitude is, I think, if you're doing something and it doesn't make you a big pile of cash right now, like right this minute, then it's a waste of time. And that's fine. That's their philosophy. But I don't want to be around it.
Yeah, no, I mean, anything that's holding you back, like that's
Yeah,
you have to.
that's been the only bitter pill that I've had to swallow since I started doing it. Like, I bet the plus side is that I've met new people like yourself, but I've actually lost a few people that I've known my whole life, because what, I'm not going to beat my head against the brick wall. I don't ever want to feel like I'm in a straitjacket in life. When I'm at work, when I'm working, it's a little different, because they're paying my wages, so I have to do what they expect me to do.
Yeah.
But outside of work, I want to be John Leister, and just like you're Nicholas, right? And we accept each other, and we love each other, and we're rooting for each other to manifest. And anybody who's trying to undermine that, I just separate myself. It's not hard.
You're the combination of, or only as successful, however you want to put it, as the 5 people you spend the most time around. You better make sure you're picking good people to spend time around.
Absolutely. Be discriminating, because if you're with someone and they're a black hole of negativity, and some people are. I mean, I have one friend. I love this guy. He's like my brother. But he's never congratulated me for any of my books. Like, I'll tell him I was a guest on a podcast, and he'll just go on about his latest medical condition. Like, it's never anything positive. And some people will spend their whole lives that way. And you know what? We can't change other people. All we can do is set an example for them. It's like, what? Guess what? This same guy's like, oh, I want to write a children's book. I have this idea for a children's book. Well, where is it? You've been talking about it for 5 years now. I don't know how to do it. We'll go to the library and ask the staff to help you, like I did.
Well, I had an idea for a children's book on this call. I'm going to redo the Bible as children's stories, utilizing the characters from Star Wars.
Oh, that's amazing.
You just got it in my head that Yoda is going to be God. So
wow,
so now we get to put Luke as Jesus, and I think we got something here.
There you go.
I'm not gonna say we're gonna turn Pontius Pilate into Harrison Ford, but we'll probably do that.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Go for it.
Thank you so much for coming on here, John.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for doing all the hard work and just being able to talk on your own. You didn't even have to interject hardly.
You know what? It's not hard work. Writing these books for me. Another podcaster said to me, "Todd, you've been working really hard over the last 3 years," and I took it in like as a compliment. I said, "That's a great compliment. When you follow your bliss, it's not hard work. It's hard work to not do it. I have to will myself to not do it sometimes, especially when I'm on my lunch break and I'm writing longer than my lunch break, and I get in trouble from my supervisor. So that's a good thing."
You definitely seem as though your life is full of joy, and that's what I want everyone to be able to experience that.
What's the alternative? You know, there's so much suffering in the world. Life is short. We're here today, gone tomorrow. We have to enjoy ourselves as much as we can. And we're not going to do that if we don't manifest our dreams. If we procrastinate, it's not going to happen. And we suffer, and the world suffers. Do you want to make the world a better place? Make yourself a better person.
Nothing more needs said.
Okay.
Do you fancy yourself the next Tolkien, Lewis, or Barker? Maybe you just have something subversive to say. Hopefully this podcast is helping you. But maybe your ambitions are just a little bigger than you can handle on your own. Head over to ironagemarketing.com and let Nikki P help ensure your book doesn't release to nobody.